Marketplace is supported by Personal Capital, offering advice from fiduciary advisors and professional-grade financial tools. Learn more at personalcapital.com.
Only one more Friday after today until the voting ends. So let's review where this economy stands, shall we? From American Public Media, this is Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by Progressive Insurance, offering a way to buy home insurance with their Home Quote Explorer tool. Custom quotes and rates are available online. Learn more at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Now that's Progressive. And by Avalara, simplifying sales tax compliance with cloud-based solutions. Avalara automatically integrates with more than 700 of the most widely used ERP and e-commerce solutions. Avalara, tax compliance done right.
In Los Angeles, I'm Kyle Rizdal. Friday today, the 23rd day of October. Good as always to have you along, everybody. It sounds simple, I know, but it's kind of not. Sussing out where things stand 11 days out from when this election is going to end. But that is the job, so we will do it. Gina Smilek's at the New York Times. Kate Davidson is at the Wall Street Journal. Hey, you two.
Hi, Kai. Hey, Kai.
So, Gina, let me start with you and the first question, which I think is the easy one. Big picture. Where does this economy stand right now?
The economy is recovering, but it is absolutely not through the wilderness yet. We've seen unemployment come down really sharply. It's down to 7.9% as of September, which is, it was at nearly 15% back in April. So that's pretty solid and rapid recovery. But that said, 7.9% is still very high unemployment. We've still got, millions and millions of people out of work who had jobs as recently as February. And there's still a lot of progress left to be made, getting those people back to work, helping them make up for the income that they've lost over this period, and making sure that they can sort of get back to regular economic life to the extent possible.
Kate, we are going to get a report next Thursday, the first look at third quarter gross domestic product. It's going to be a big bounce off a really bad bottom, and there will be much made of it. Frame that for me, would you, in terms of where this economy stands?
Well, Republicans, will be very excited. They'll be talking about, how positive this report is, how it demonstrates that, the economy is really bouncing back. As you said, though, it's coming off of this low. So it's going to be important. We'll hear a lot of economists saying you need to look at the level, not the rate. So, we'll see this huge percentage increase. As Gina mentioned, the level of GDP is still way below where we were before the pandemic. There are still millions of people out of work. So it's important to think about it in that context. And I think it's also important to remember that we have more recent signs that some of that momentum that we had over the summer has stalled. Getting the initial sort of waves of people back to the jobs, the employment gains we've seen so far. The way to think about those are sort of the easy pickings, if you will. There was sort of an easy big bounce when businesses that had been completely shut down started to reopen. But I think it will take much longer from here on out to see more improvement.
Gina, I don't want to get too weedy, but you wrote this week about the Federal Reserve and how some of the programs that the Fed initially powered up with Treasury backing behind it, and let me repeat, we don't need to get too weedy here, it kind of hasn't panned out. And I need you to explain what's going on with that.
Right. So I think of this as sort of a two-part story. So part one is the good news part of the story, which is that the Fed came out and said, hey, look, guys, we have $454 billion to back these programs. Any kind of market chaos you throw at us, we can deal with it. And just having that sort of confident statement and all of that money behind them allowed them to really convince markets that things were going to be okay, provided a backstop, allowed markets to calm down. And so they never really had to employ that money just because the private sector took care of itself once it was confident that the Fed was ready to step in. Part two of the story is a little bit less optimistic, which is that the Fed had promised to try and set up these facilities that would lend money to mid-sized businesses and get money to municipalities. The municipality program has worked to some degree as a backstop, but it hasn't made a lot of what I think you can essentially think of as loans. And the mid-sized business program hasn't been used very much at all. And so for various design reasons, those programs have fallen a little bit flat. And so I think that's the less happy part of the story is, the Fed tried to stretch into areas where it hasn't really tread before, and it didn't always work out super well.
Okay, so we had the Fed with its lending programs, Kate. I want to pick up on something you reported on this week, and we did some work on this week as well, and that is fiscal stimulus, relief from Congress and the White House, and how it is not coming, and how that imperils the way this recovery is going to look. Explain that.
Sure. So I think one way to think about it, which is what we tried to do, is comparing it to the last economic downturn. What happened after the 2008 crisis. Within a couple of years, Congress had done a bunch of stimulus, but then the Tea Party came in, and people were worried about all the spending and deficits, and they pulled back. They sort of shifted to austerity. They tightened belts, the federal government and cities and states. And what that essentially did, we know this, over time, there's been a lot of research. We can look at the numbers. That was a drag on economic growth, and it ultimately slowed down the recovery. We had a very long expansion, the longest in history, but it was pretty weak. It was not that strong. And so, policymakers are really worried about making the same mistakes this time. So they're concerned that the longer the economy goes without more fiscal support, and most economists think the economy needs some more fiscal support, some more economic relief. The longer it goes, the harder it's going to be to stave off some of these traditional recessionary forces. So more layoffs, falling incomes, a pullback in lending, lower demand. Things just start to get really hard to counteract the longer the economy goes in this weak state. And that just can lead to a really uneven and long, slow, painful recovery.
Which is, it has to be said, kind of what we're looking at now, given the way those negotiations are going. Gina, I am loath to dip too much into the debate last night, but anything in half a minute or so that economically struck you out of that debate?
I think one of the interesting things that I think came up again and again in the debate is that so much of what happens next in the American economy actually hinges not necessarily on any specific economic policy, but rather on the pandemic response. I think that President Trump clearly is portraying himself as the better option for the economy because he's not going to close it all down again, because he doesn't want to do that, and because, that'll allow us to keep going. I think Vice President Biden has clearly made it a real talking point that, the reason we had to close down so drastically in the first place is that we didn't get this under control. And so I think, we've got control on one hand, no lockdowns on the other, and voters are going to have to make a choice there.
Kate, 30 seconds, super quick. Last word to you. Anything you want to point out from last night?
No, I think that Gina's right. I thought, Kai, you were going to ask me about the stimulus, so I had a zinger for you, which is, if I may, well, this is my world right now. I can't stop thinking about this. And really, I thought a colleague put it perfectly this week. He said, it's like when you're on the phone, there's really not much more to say, but nobody wants to hang up. I think that's kind of where things are. So if you were sitting there thinking, well, it sounds like Washington's going to come together and we'll have some stimulus soon, I don't know about that. I wouldn't hold my breath.
No, you hang up first.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Gina Smilek at the New York Times, Kate Davidson at the Wall Street Journal. Thanks, you two.
Thank you.
No,
thanks,
you
Kai.
Hang up first. All right. Anyway, we got to go. More sideways than up or down on Wall Street today. Banking, they were, says a banker buddy of mine, that the relief bill is going to get done, no matter what Kate Davidson's friend says. Color me dubious. We'll have the details when we do the numbers. We did a story yesterday, maybe it was Wednesday, I don't know, I lose track, about how a lot of us who are working from home are going to be working from home a lot longer. And while you maybe don't need office attire as much anymore, you got to wear something, which is, as we like to say on this program, a business opportunity. Case in point, Zara, the Spanish fast fashion retailer, just announced a new lingerie collection, which might be better described as stuff you'd wear to lounge around the house. Loose-fitting cotton pajama pants and silk button-down shirts. And Kohl's says it's going to be launching an athleisure brand come the springtime. Evidence, as Marketplace's Mariel Segarra reports, that retailers think casual is here to stay.
At the beginning of the pandemic, Dina Gashman was not exactly wearing her Sunday best. She has a toddler. He was out of school. She was trying to work.
Like I probably had a robe on half the day and my hair was just a complete mess. And then I started to think, okay, it's going to make me feel better and it's going to be better for my sanity if I maybe put some mascara on or put on an actual outfit.
Eventually, Gashman, who lives in Austin, Texas, even bought some new clothes.
I got one pair of pants from Target that are very soft, comfortable cargo type pants that I could probably sleep in, but then I could also wear with heels.
I'm sorry, heels? What are those again? But that right there, that is the sweet spot retailers are aiming for. Clothes that are comfortable, but don't make you feel like you've completely let yourself go. Bronwyn Cosgrave, who hosts the fashion podcast A Different Tweed, says there's a particular consumer these retailers are targeting.
A woman who did get dressed up to go to the office and doesn't want to lose that aspect.
And Cosgrave says buying lingerie and athleisure is becoming a form of retail therapy for many women.
It is an affordable luxury. It's an impulse buy that's not going to dent one's mortgage payments or car payments.
In recessions past, women bought lipstick instead. But, lipstick and masks, not the best combination. I'm Marielle Segarra for Marketplace.
Good evening, WNYC's Sean Carlson and Jamie Floyd here. You are listening to Marketplace. All Things Considered is back at 7. You've been listening to us come to you throughout the evening and throughout the week. In fact, talking about our fall pledge drive here at WNYC. And not too long ago, we really hit a milestone. We met our goal for this fundraiser. So we want to extend a huge thank you to everybody who has done their part and contributed to WNYC. If you have not yet had a chance to give, we still need your help. You still can help. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but we know we're going to do it, and we'll do it together. It is your contributions that help keep us on the air. We truly cannot do it without you. So you can give at WNYC.org. You can also call and make your contribution securely over the phone by calling 888-376-9692. Again, the number is 888-376-9692.
And Sean, we had been asking our listeners to help us meet a goal that we have now met, but we never really meet our goal here at New York Public Radio, WNYC in Gothamus, because it's an ongoing project, this experiment in public radio. It's a successful experiment. It's one that means we're free of commercials. We're free of external pressures that advertising dollars bring. But it's one that also relies on the community to keep us supported, to keep us on the air, community dollars, listener support. And that listener support, Sean, is the single greatest source of our funding. Yes, we do get sponsorship dollars and we do get business support, but a lot of that is dried up right now, of course, understandably so in this pandemic. And even when we do have fulsome support from those sources, the single greatest support we've had always has been from our listeners. And that's what public radio is all about. Listener support, community support. It's a community-driven radio station. So please show that you believe in it. Show that you believe in it right now at a time when it matters more than ever. Please, if you can give today, do so right now. Give at WNYC.org or call 888-376-WNYC. That's 888-376-9692.
And as Jamie said, you are the most, not only the largest, but the most reliable source of our funding at WNYC. And again, if you're just joining us now, we are having a great fundraiser. So we want to extend a huge thanks to everyone who is giving. Again, we know we can rely on you, and you've come through yet again. If you haven't yet joined them, be part of this for yourself, of course, for the news that you come here for, but also for everyone who depends on WNYC, both in New York and beyond, as we get through some rough times together, but we've been through rough times before, and we're going to get through these ones too together. So if you have not yet called and contributed to WNYC, give us a call, 888-376-9692. You can also go online to WNYC.org. I'll give the number again. It's 888-376-9692. This is our fall fundraiser here at WNYC.
And as you say, we have been through rough times before, Sean, but WNYC has been here for the community through those past crises, 9/11, Hurricane Sandy. New Yorkers and others in the region turned to us during those crises, and listeners, in turn, have always stepped in, and we trust that you will do so again as we cover the crises we're facing right now, the pandemic, and the many other crises and challenges facing our city, our communities, our country. And that's why we shortened this fundraiser. We know you will support us, so please do so, just as you always have. Help WNYC right now. If you can make a donation, give at WNYC.org or call 888-376-9692. And thank you.
Let's do the numbers. Dow Industrial's down 28 today, about a 10%, 28,335. The Nasdaq found 42 points, about 0.3%, 11,548. S&P 500 picked up 11 points, also 0.3%, ended at 34,65. The virus is the economy, as we say on this program. So, a check on the numbers, shall we? The U.S. reported more than 71,000 new coronavirus cases yesterday, highest since July. The CDC says cases are growing pretty much all over the country, calling this, and this is a quote, a distressing trend. We heard from Marielle about the casual clothing trend. A couple of apparel retailers here. Kohl's added 3.7%, Gap up 1.2%. You're listening to Marketplace.
Marketplace is supported by C3.ai. C3.ai software enables organizations to use artificial intelligence at enterprise scale, solving previously unsolvable business problems. Learn more at C3.ai. And by X-Chair, maker of the X2 home office chair, with dynamic variable lumbar support and 10 ergonomic features to fit users of different shapes and sizes at xchair.com or 8444-X-Chair. And by Mimecast, offering cloud email security. Mimecast is dedicated to protecting companies from spam, phishing, and other email-based cyber threats, serving more than 20,000 Microsoft 365 customers. Mimecast.com. Relentless protection, resilient world.
This is Marketplace. I'm Kai Ryssdal. A dip into the markets-based capitalism tea leaves now with an eye to the calendar. Analysts and economists have long looked for patterns linking presidencies and stock markets. Who's better for them, who's worse, even what might markets be able to tell us about elections and presidencies. Turns out there are some patterns. Marketplace's Sabri Benishore takes a look at what the record shows.
There's data on the stock market and presidencies going all the way back to 1789, and Urian Timmer has dug through it. He's director of global macro at Fidelity Investment. Here's how things tend to go.
The first 2 years of a 4-year term tend to produce below average results for the markets.
7 to 8%, he says, over 2 years.
Whereas the last 2 years produce above average returns, around 9%.
This is on average, mind you. It is not a rule. Yale Hirsch, author of the Stock Trader's Almanac, first came up with this presidential election cycle theory in 1968. Investors are still talking about it. Jeffrey Green is a writer and former finance executive. He says there's kind of a folklore as to why the markets tend to move this way.
As the incumbent gets into years 3 and 4, they're now focused on re-election. So the idea is to pump the economy.
And therefore, the market goes up. Green says this is probably way overinflating the power of a president over the economy. He says the Federal Reserve has a lot more influence than any president. Tiffany LaHer is a financial advisor with Rogers Associates. She's not a fan of presidential election cycle theory or other theories that pretend to crack the mystery of the market.
I wouldn't plan my strategy for retirement based on any of these theories that are out there.
Presidential election cycle theory has not held up very well in the past few administrations. And in any case, it's based on averages over more than a century. And if 2020 has taught us anything, it is that we have absolutely no idea what is next. In New York, I'm Sabri Benishore for Marketplace.
You don't want to touch stuff right now if you don't have to. You don't want to have to pick up a menu or fill out some registration form or something. You're just not feeling that. I get it. Good thing there is technology then, huh? Those little black and white patterned squares you scan with a smartphone, quick response codes they're called, QR codes. They are having kind of a moment in this pandemic. Nicolas Rivero is a tech reporter at Quartz. He has been writing about their rise these days. Nico, thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Super quick as we get going here. A lot of people are familiar with barcodes, right, from long ago. QR codes are sort of the next evolution. What makes them different? What makes them better?
So the whole magic of a QR code is that it stores information in 2 dimensions, right? So if you think of a barcode, it's a series of one-dimensional lines, and it can only store so much information that way. Because QR codes are these little patterns of squares, they can store a lot more information, something like a web page's URL, which is why you can scan them and go to a link.
Okay, so hold that thought for when we get to what they're being used for now. But I do want a little bit of history out of you first. 10 years ago, plus or minus, QR codes kind of come on the scene in a big-ish way. But as you say in this piece, they were just terrible.
Yeah, there were 3 big problems with QR codes when they first kind of came out to consumers back in 2010. So the first is if you wanted to actually scan one of these things, you had to download a separate bespoke app to be able to do it. The second was cellular data at the time wasn't as good as it is now, so it wasn't a sure thing that you'd be able to actually load the web page you were looking for when you're out and about, which is where you'd come across these QR codes. The third thing is just that no one could actually figure out a good use for them. So a lot of brands came out with QR codes in their advertising because they wanted to position themselves as tech savvy, but they would just do it in ways that didn't make any sense. Like you'd have, for example, a Subway ad with a QR code on it that the only way you could get up close enough to actually scan the thing would be to stand directly on the subway tracks.
Right. Okay, so now here we are, 2020. More data's out there floating around. Technology is better. Smartphones mostly can read them pretty easily. How are they being used now?
So the use that people probably have seen most often is that as restaurants have reopened, they've used QR codes to replace handing you a physical menus. One of the more interesting uses, I think, is that PayPal and Venmo have rolled out QR codes for mobile payments in the U.S., which is something that's been very popular in China. And there's one more thing as well, which is that there are contact tracing apps which are using QR codes to be able to kind of give people a way to show that they have tested negative for coronavirus before entering a building.
Right. And you could see that being sort of the passport thing, right? You get that code, you show it on an airline or whatever, and in theory, you're good to go, right?
Right. That's like another big use in China. And we're slowly seeing maybe some rollout of that in the U.S. Abbott, that company that's selling 150 million rapid COVID tests to the federal government, has an app for that. You take the test, it gives you a QR code, a company can scan it and say, okay, you're good to come in.
Let me just throw in a really quick cautionary tale here. I'm sure it's like 80% of the American population has a smartphone. But that leaves 20% of people, which is millions of people who don't. So that's one issue. And then another one is, if you're like, and she's listening to this, I'm going to hear about this later, but if you're my mom and somebody says, no, I'm sorry, you need to do a QR code, mom's, she tries, but she's not the most technologically savvy person in the world. What do you do for them?
Well, that's exactly right. So this is definitely, as you said, a big point of caution and something that I think is giving people pause about rolling out QR codes too widely, especially for pandemic uses like determining whether you can board public transportation or enter a building or something like that.
Right. And one would hope there would be some workarounds for the non-technologically savvy amongst us. Nico Rivero, he's a technology reporter at Quartz, talking to QR codes. Nico, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
This is WNYC. You've been listening to Marketplace. Coming your way in just a few minutes, it is All Things Considered. And whether it's Marketplace or All Things Considered or Morning Edition or Brian Lair, all of those things are brought to you by your listener dollars. Your contributions are what makes up the biggest and most reliable source of funding at WNYC. And we say reliable, and now we truly do have some hard evidence here that says as much, because we have met our goal for our shortened fall pledge drive here at WNYC. And we really want to extend a huge thank you to everyone who has been giving. We encourage others who have not yet to join them. Of course, we never stop accepting contributions. Be a part of this for yourself and for everyone else who depends on WNYC in New York and beyond as we continue to navigate these tricky times together. So if you haven't yet contributed, call 888-376-9692. Again, I'm Sean Carlson with race and justice editor Jamie Floyd. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, Sean. And journalism, Sean, you and I have talked about so many times, is something you and I both believe in.
Of course.
We talk about it on the air, but we also talk about it. I think our listeners won't be surprised to learn that Sean and I spend a lot of time standing around the WNYC newsroom, or at least we used to, talking about journalism and what it means to us as professionals, but also to our city and to our community, to our democracy. We kick these ideas around. And it's good that we had those conversations, because now that we're not in the newsroom together, we're remote. We had that foundation as part of our work so that we can better serve you, our listeners, in this remote fashion. And knowing that we have that foundation helps us better know what's going on in the communities that we serve, and in turn helps you make informed decisions as community members, for your family, for your neighbors. And this pandemic has really put outlets like ours in the spotlight, but also in a precarious position. We need your support. We need the generosity of our members to keep going, because that's our model. We are not a commercial outlet. We're public media, and you are the public in public media. So please, if you can, give today, and do so right now at the end of our very short fall fundraiser at WNYC.org, or call 888-376-WNYC. That's 888-376-9692.
And of course, public radio, public media is not public media without, say, a tote bag, maybe a mug. But you will want to listen to this, because there are some pretty cool things on there that we do want to tell you about. There's a pigeon T-shirt. It's got a very distinct pigeon on the front, listening to WNYC on big ol' headphones. It's a very cool shirt. I will say so myself, as a proud owner of one of them. If you join WNYC at a sustaining level of $10 a month, we're happy to gift you that T-shirt, or a one-time contribution of $120. If you contribute to WNYC, become a sustaining member at $15 a month, we do have those masks. You'll get two WNYC masks, the red, and one Gothamist face mask. But again, those are just ways to thank you for your support, because again, you are the most reliable source of our funding, and again, you have gotten us to our goals, so we want to extend a huge thank you. But again, the number to call, 888-376-9692, or again, go online to WNYC.org and just hit donate right there on the front page.
And I think it's important, Sean, to remind listeners about the sustaining membership option, because sustaining members have been instrumental in helping WNYC stay strong during this pandemic, when the economy shut down. Many businesses and nonprofit partners that we've had to pause their support, and that's understandable. But the monthly donations from sustainers really provided a reliable foundation of support over these last few months. So if you're not a sustainer yet, please consider becoming one today if you can. That